Just a dark screen.
Okay, hold on a second then. Do we have to?
Just a second. This is your showing the old broadcasting. Just a second. Okay, you're live again. I refreshed it. Okay, perfect now. Miss Leia looks perfect on Instagram is good. Okay, let me check the YouTube. Okay, YouTube, Beyond What You See channel. It is live. Okay, YouTube is perfect. And let me check the Facebook. Okay, you're on the YouTube too. Okay, everything is good. We can go.
Welcome to Beyond What You See, the podcast where we go deeper, push further, and lean into the
Miss Leia
possibilities.
get lost.
She lost.
Okay, she's back. She's back.
Hey, but people can hear you, Mister. You gonna better you edit this out. Okay. Okay. Welcome to Beyond What You See, the podcast where we go deeper, push further, and lean into the possibilities that lies beyond the surface of our lives, of our communities, and of our calling. I'm your host, Steve Robertson, purpose-driven, passion-led, potential focused. I believe that every step that we take with intentions bring us closer to our destiny. And I want to thank you for stepping in to this space with us today. Now, listen, today is going to be something special. We're about to have a conversation with a dynamic, focused, and deeply impactful leader. I have the honor of watching her soar. She's an advocate. She leads with vision and compassion. My guest today is Miss Leia Thomas. She's the executive director of the Educational Opportunity Program at Marquette University. She's no stranger to building bridges for students who has been historically excluded or underrepresented. Before her role, she was at Marquette, but before her role as an executive director, she had the awesome opportunity of leading the Wisconsin Department of Instruction WAYOP office. And she had a chance to work with across the state with TRIO and pre-college and college access programs, Gear Up and college access programs. So Ms. Thomas, she's a walking testament of what it means to live beyond what you see. To look at students not for where they come from, but where they're capable of going. And I know this conversation is going to leave you inspired and equipped. So first, let's get into Ms. Thomas. Welcome to Beyond What You See. I'm so honored to have you on. First off, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm honored to be a part of this podcast. So, thank you, Stephen, for creating such a platform for folks to really recognize and see beyond themselves. So this is great.
Great, great, great. I always believe there's more, right? I believe there's more than what you see. I believe there's more purpose, more possibilities, more stories behind the struggle. And I know from our shared work that you lead with that same spirit and that passion. Talk to us about how you define beyond what you see. How has this phrase shaped your leadership, your journey, and the work you do at EOP?
That's really a great opening question. I always say that true leadership isn't confined by metrics, programs, or titles. Um, People who've worked alongside with me know that, I always say a title is just a title if you're not putting in the work and doing the work. But true leadership to me is rooted in vision, humanity, and legacy. It's a commitment to not just see the present conditions, but the potential embedded within people, programs, and struggles, and getting into beyond what you see, seeing the unseen. That's big. Identifying barriers for our students, what they're really bringing to them to the classroom, obstacles that they had to overcome just to get here. Um, Seeing those barriers in them before they're actually even spoken out loud, and shaping programs like EOP to meet the needs with dignity and intention. And I think that's so important, to be intentional in the work that we're doing. It means leading with the vision. We have to have a vision, setting a clear direction that isn't limited by the current resources or constraints, but really inspired by equity. You will hear me talk a lot about equity in my leadership, and possibility. Taking a word from you, possibility is important. Investing in our staff, the staff that we work with every day, but not just developing staff for their current roles, but really cultivating them as future leaders who can transform the landscape of higher education. I talk a lot about succession planning, and what that means, and really developing people. I always say, if someone is working alongside me and they're not growing, I feel like I'm not really doing my job. And in sustaining legacy, I have the absolute pleasure to show up to Marquette EOP every day, and work with the program, and lead a program that has such a profound legacy for higher education in the entire country, and protecting the mission of EOP while reimagining what that means for a new generation, knowing that the seeds that I plant in my role as executive director really will outlast my tenure. And so, it doesn't, mean that, that we have to focus on the right now, but you always have to be forward thinking. What is the possibility? What is beyond what we see right now? And leading with clarity and compassion. And I think that's big, because you always have to have an eye on the outcome, but also for people. Leading beyond what you see, trusting the process, and continuing to sow the seeds. And so that's, and I feel so blessed to be able to show up and do that every single day.
Great. Can you take us back? What were some defining moments in your own educational or leadership journey where someone saw beyond your circumstances and into your potential?
You know, I always go back, to when I was in high school. I graduated from Vincent High School, and I myself, I'm first generation. I'm low income, and I didn't know anyone that was going to college. I just did what I had to do and showed up to school every day. I got really good grades, and one day we had a presentation. WEOP, the Wisconsin Educational Opportunity Program, came to Vincent High School to talk to students about going to college. And it was my high school principal, Gloria Erkins, who said, "The WEOP folks will be here this afternoon, and I think you need to stop by their table." And I said, "Who are the WEOP folks?" And she said, "Not." And then she changed her sentence to say, "I don't think you should stop by their table. You should stop by their table, and you need to stop by their table." And so, it was a long line of students, at the table. And then, I was just kind of browsing, the table, and then, just skimming through it. And I turned around, and I was like, okay. And I was headed back to my locker, and I heard someone say, "Hey, you in the purple shirt, And I turned around, and now that I know that person was Geraldine Washington, who was a education specialist. Geraldine White. I'm sorry, Geraldine White, who was an education specialist with the Wisconsin Education Opportunity Program, and she made sure she recognized me. She saw me, and she really pulled me in and talked to me about college. Wanted to get my mom involved. I always tell this story. My mom didn't have bus fare, but Geraldine came to us. She gave us bus tickets to get to her when we needed to, and she really helped me shape and find an institution that would meet my educational goals. And so you talk about me being at WEOP before taking on the executive director role here at Marquette. And so it was just such a blessing to be, it was full circle for me to really see that, again, I talk about planting those seeds. And so when Geraldine planted those seeds and that seed into me about education, about giving back, the compassion that she led with, the empathy, her seeing beyond my circumstance, seeing that we didn't have bus fare, but to one day being able to have bus fare, seeing that, you know, we were living in a certain neighborhood, but seeing that I have potential to live in a different neighborhood with more resources. And so she's seeing beyond my potential, and watching that, and then being able to go back and lead such a program with such compassion, such empathy, and with the same spirit that she had. And so, yeah, you know, it was, and so when I lead with intention every day, I show up with intention. It's never about me. It's always about the bigger goal, the students, and getting students to see beyond their circumstances, beyond their barriers, beyond their situations, beyond their neighborhood, beyond their family systems, and, you know, seeing something greater within themselves. So,
I want to stop right here. You talked about she saw you. Geraldine White saw you. Speak to that for a moment. Let's stay there for a second. Can you tell me about the importance with the people that work in college access, people that deal with families or forward facing or student facing people, the importance of seeing our students?
oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so important because oftentimes, you know, students get lost in the shuffle because, you know, we bring students to campus, or we're out here in high schools and we're recruiting students, and of course we're going to talk to the students who are forthcoming and who's going to talk to us, the students that, you know, they're going to ask the right questions, they're going to be more outgoing, more extroverted, you know. But then it's also important to recognize why you're there, why you're there, who's showing up for you, and then recognizing who isn't speaking, why they're not speaking, and tap into that potential. I'm wondering why the student is at my table browsing, but they're not saying anything. Let me find out a little bit more about this student and what's going on. Um, and oftentimes, you know, we get so busy in the work that we fail to see the unseen. And I talked about that, seeing the unseen, the barriers to students, because oftentimes students aren't just going to come to us and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, hey, I would like to do this. But it's like I said before, it's recognizing the unseen and unspoken barriers in our students. And so I think when Geraldine seen me, she seen a quiet high school student who was there. She probably recognized that, you know, maybe she saw some potential in me. Maybe she wanted to know why I just browsed and walked away, why I didn't stay and ask questions. You know, she was curious, you know, why, what is it about me? What is it about this student? All these other students are hovering around, they're asking the right questions. They're trying to, you know, write their names down on lists to get emails or phone calls. But then you have this one student in the purple shirt that just browsed the table, walked through the crowd, and then quietly, you know, made a beeline, you know, to her locker. And she stood up, you know, and she stood up and she said, "Hey, you in the purple shirt." And I think, and I always remember that I wore a purple shirt, and that was in 95, 95, 96. And and because she said that, she named it. She called me. She recognized me. And she looked beyond my circumstances when I said, "Well, we don't have bus fare." She said, "I'm gonna come to you." And I said, "Oh, okay." And then we made a follow-up appointment. And then she seen the unspoken barriers that, okay, well, I know they may not have bus fares. So she just said, "Well, I also included some courtesy bus tickets just in case." You know, and that was powerful, and that meant something. And it meant, and to see someone who just met you show up every day and just wanted to make sure that you were successful, that I seen beyond my circumstances of the halls of Vincent High School, the neighborhood of 27th and Center and 37th and Walnut, that I had potential to move on to something greater. And so that meant a lot to be seen in that moment.
I think that's huge. Seeing people, seeing them, they may see themselves or not see themselves as college material or college grads or potential college grad. They may not see themselves outside their neighborhood. But the people that we interact with, we just can't see them as just where they're at. We need to see them through eyes of faith, eyes of possibilities, eyes of potential and purpose. And that's why we do what we do every day. So you worked on the front lines of both state advocacy and direct services for students. What gives you hope about the generation of scholars and leaders? About this generation of scholars and leaders? What gives you hope?
What gives me hope? Oh, the students. Students give me hope. I mean, I was so blessed and so fortunate to lead a statewide team for the Wisconsin Education Opportunity Program. And just to give a little background, so it's housed under the Department of Public Instruction, in Madison, and it was started by the late great Paul Spraggins, and then also to be a part of a program and lead a program that was started by Dr. Arnold Mitchum, who was a giant in the TRIO in college access world, to be able to lead such great programs that mirrored each other in a sense, but started by two great giants in college access and TRIO who were actually, really good friends as well too. But I had 5 regional offices, and I was able to see the work and the hope and the inspiration to students in Bayfield, Wisconsin, on reservations, and Ashland, Wisconsin, and Green, Green Bay, Sheboygan, Shawano, Wausau, Racine County, and Madison. Eau Claire. It was just different demographic, rural and urban areas, but the same spirit of hope, the same spirit of, I'm better than my circumstances. The same spirit of, I want to do something that's bigger than myself. I want to do something that no one in my family has ever done before, and that's go to college. To see that was amazing, and to see and be able to lead a dynamic staff that was so passionate about the work, across the entire state of Wisconsin, was phenomenal, very phenomenal. And to see the growth in that program. And so, we have the EIP program, which is, for students who aren't in grants or not in Gear Up and in Talent Search and in Upper Bound. But we also, and I seen the need. Again, it's the seeing the unseen, seeing the need. And I was like, gosh, being able to grow that program even more. Before I left, I wrote for a Talent Search grant for Milwaukee for the southeast counties, and so fortunate to be able to expand that. And we were, we that grant was successful. We were awarded that grant, and to be able to expand the services that we were able to have in the city of Milwaukee to service more students was just phenomenal. Again, it's me planting those seeds. And that foundation is still growing strong. That talent search grant is still, I've left WEOP. I've been at Marquette since 2021, and that talent search grant is still sustaining and still servicing over 500 additional students in Milwaukee that they weren't serving before, bringing in more staff with the same kind of hope and inspiration. And so that was great. It was a great opportunity, and I'm was very blessed to be able to lead such a dynamic program and be a part of something, I always say, that's bigger than me, that's going to outlast me.
Great. Marquette EOP has a legacy of transforming lives. What are some ways you and your team are building on the legacy today?
Oh man, legacy is so big. I think that, when we, Trio, so this work started here at this institution in 1969, and it's 2025. It was started by, Ardo Mitchum, who, like I said before, was just a giant, in this work, and still is. And to be able to show up every day and to build, to holding on to the legacy and holding on to the space, but in recognizing that, but also being able to grow that into something that I always said is going to outlast me. To be able to sustain it, sustainability is big. How do we sustain the legacy and preserve the legacy of Trio, of EOP, of college access for students here on this campus? And how do we show the campus that EOP is adding value to the greater Marquette community, that we're needed, that the work that we're doing is valued, supported, that the work that we're doing is not in vain, but the work that we're doing is a value add to what's happening right here on this campus, the student success initiatives that's going on right now at the university. How are we contributing to the overall, greater mission and vision to Marquette, aligning ourselves with the university's strategic plan, making sure that we are continuing to do the good work that needs to be done. I always say this isn't hard work, but it's heart work, because you have to lead with passion. You have to lead with purpose. It isn't about a 9 to 5. It's beyond that, going beyond the borders. Going beyond the of what's happening right here on 13th and Clybourne, reaching the communities, going into the schools, being seen. I always say, this work doesn't stop when we leave Marquette. Even, I'm even at the grocery store. If I see a young person, I'm talking to them, I'm depositing it to them. What are you doing after this? When are you graduating? Did you know about these programs? What do you want to be when you want to grow up? Every time I see a young person, I think it's my duty to deposit into them, wherever I'm at. If I'm at the grocery store, if I'm, at my son's basketball games, or if I'm at a fair, if I'm interacting with a young person, I'm investing in a young person just in my interactions.
Great. What I love about your story is you tell the story all the time about Geraldine White and Miss Erkins at Vincent High School, and how a principal pointed you in the right direction and told you what you needed to do because they saw something in you that maybe you didn't see at yourself. She saw beyond what you saw at the time. She saw your potential. She saw your worth. She saw the opportunity that she wanted to make sure didn't slip through your fingers. And then Miss Geraldine White, as you was walking past in that purple shirt, she wouldn't let you just walk past her without trying to call out to you. without trying to make sure that you realize that you had options and you realize that even when you didn't think you could get there, she wanted to remove barriers from your lives. And as we deal with the times that we deal with in our society, where some people think that programs like Gear Up or Student Support Services, Upper Bound, Trio, and some other programs are relics of the past. Your story gives me hope that there's passionate people that love to make sure that the playing field is leveled and people have opportunity, and it's still important today. So I'm glad. It excites me about your story. You know, it echoes the heartbeat of this podcast, that the truest transformation doesn't come from what you have or where you come from, even what you face in life. It comes from being and seen and supported from people like Geraldine White, like Miss Erkins, and like Miss Thomas, who makes room for students to dream beyond barriers. Before we close, I wanted to ask one final question. If you could speak directly to young people right now, maybe a first generation student who may who may feel unseen or unsure of themselves, maybe someone listening who was wrestling with doubt about what would you say to them that will move them forward in hope?
That's good. That's a good question. I think that students got to realize that they're doing something big by just showing up. I mean, just showing up is a big piece of it, and putting the pieces together by just what was handed to you. Um, in that they don't have to have it all figured out today. I always tell students who come into Marquette and say, well, I don't know what I want to do. And I said, you made the best decision by just showing up here. Now you enrolled in a, higher education institution. You're here at Marquette University. You don't have to have it all figured out today. You just have to keep moving, one step at a time. And I think that students often wrestle with the I'm not good enough. I'm not I'm not built for this. I didn't come from this. And I always tell students that they're not here by accident. That they're not here alone, and they're becoming someone that their younger self will be proud of. When I think back on that, when I think back on younger Laya, even before the interaction in high school with Geraldine White and meeting Miss Erkins at Vincent at the time, I think about, the Laya in second grade at 37th Street School at Career Day, when we had all these career folks come in, and they were talking about all these different professions we could be in it. And I think it inspired me to dream. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew I wanted to do something. It's like, wow, we had a police officer, we had attorneys, we had all these people, and it inspired me to dream. And I would say, never lose sight of your dream. A dream deferred is not a dream denied. And so always think bigger, always have that, be a visionary. It's not about, being top billed. It's not about, being the most popular, the most talked about, the most, person that's requested. But if you stand true to yourself and your dreams and your goals, it's about you, because we each own our own story and our own journey. And the way we show up is, we have to be authentic and true to ourselves. And like we tell our young people all the time in Upper Bound and our pre-college programs, stay true to who you are. Hold on to yourself, because nobody can do you better than you, and nobody can be you better than you. And so your dream is your dream. Your journey is your journey. Your steps is ordered. What God has for you is for you. And so I would tell them to keep holding on to that dream, even if it seems so far fetched and so out of reach. Because when I was in second grade, again, when I had that career day, I didn't know how people became an officer, how people became an attorney. I didn't know any of that. But I held on to, like, I want to do something one day. And God heard that. And then here I am, all these many years later, I'm in a hallway and someone says, "Hey, you in a purple shirt," and it really changed my whole life. There would be no Laya Thomas, executive director of Marquette University, if there was no Gloria Erkins, there was no Geraldine White, who believed in me, who saw something in me, who seen the unseen, who seen those unspoken barriers that wasn't spoken out loud, that I didn't say, but they just knew. And they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And they planted those seeds in me. And so I just feel it's my the way I pay it forward is showing up every day, as my authentic self, with authentic servants, servant leadership, and and everybody who knows the way I work is, you know, I'm boots on the ground, you know. And like I said, it's not about, true leadership isn't confined by, by titles. Is rooted in humanity, legacy, and a vision. And I have a vision for every one of the students that cross my path. My vision for them is that they're going to go on, they're going to do great things, they're going to thrive, they're going to be successful, and they're going to pay it forward, and they're going to give back and reach back.
That's right there. That's the kind of leadership that moves mountains, right? Miss Thomas, thank you. Thank you for your vision. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to helping students, right? Live beyond limitations and step into purpose. It's been a blessing having you on. Remember, your story is still being written. Don't stop at what you see. Dig deeper, ask bigger questions, believe that more is possible, keep walking, for beyond what you see is not just a title, but it's a lifestyle. I'm Steve Robertson, and I'll see you next time. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beyond what you see